Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are doing something a little different. Usually, we look at a single book or specific article to try and get smart on a topic quickly. But today, I'm looking at a stack of documents on my desk that is, frankly, a little intimidating. It's heavy.
It is a hefty stack. We've got, what, history charts, timelines, excerpts from some pretty ancient textbooks.
Lists of Roman emperors, theological creeds.
It's a lot of data. It really is.
We are tackling the survey of church history, specifically focusing on the first, 500 years? And I think for a lot of people, this era is a massive black box. You know the story. You have Jesus and the disciples in the Bible, the Acts of the Apostles, and then poof.
Right.
The next thing you know, it's the Middle Ages. Everyone is wearing robes and they're building cathedrals.
There's a massive gap in the mental timeline for most people. But that gap, which is actually about 400 or 500 years, is arguably the most critical period in the history of the faith. It's the crucible. It's where everything was defined.
And looking at these documents, it's also where everything almost fell apart. That's the hook for me. I was reading through these notes on persecution and heresy, and I got this specific image in my head. Imagine a startup organization.
Okay, I'm with you. A startup.
But right out of the gate, the founder is executed by the state. The board of directors, the apostles, are hunted down and killed one by one. The public thinks you're a dangerous cult. They actually accuse you of being cannibals.
Which were real accusations, by the way. We'll definitely get to that.
Exactly. And on top of that, the government blames you for every single natural disaster. If the river floods, blame the Christians. If there's a drought, blame the Christians.
And yet this organization doesn't just survive. It takes over the world.
That is the story we are diving into. The mission for this deep dive is to answer two specific questions based on all this source material. First, how on earth did the early church survive? We are talking about massive threats, storms from without, which is the persecution, and decay from within, which is the heresy.
And the second question is the application, right? How can that specific survival guide help us, today, live more fully devoted lives? Because the mechanisms they use to survive, standing firm, defining truth, purifying the heart, are surprisingly relevant to the modern world.
So let's jump in. I want to set the context properly. We have a source here detailing the Roman persecutions of Christians, and it mentions a very specific event in AD 147 that I think sets the stage perfectly.
Yes. The birthday party.
Rome turns 1,000 years old.
A millennium of Rome.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just imagine the scale of this celebration. The sources say it was a 3-day festival, parades, games, massive sacrifices.
A whole city.
The entire city was partying. It was a display of Roman power and gratitude to the gods.
Except for one group.
Right. The Christians refused to participate. And you have to understand, in the Roman mind, this wasn't just being antisocial or a party pooper. This was dangerous.
Explain that. Why does refusing to party endanger the state?
It goes back to this concept of pax deorum.
Pax deorum.
The peace of the gods. The Romans were very pragmatic people. They believed that the stability of the entire empire depended on keeping the Roman gods, Jupiter, Mars, Apollo, happy.
Okay.
But that favor was transactional. You offer the incense, you do the rituals, and in exchange, the gods protect Rome from barbarians and famine.
It's a contract.
Completely contract. So when the Christians sat out the 1,000th birthday party, they were seen as atheists. That's actually what the Romans called them, atheists, because they didn't worship the visible gods.
So it's not just rude, it's unpatriotic.
It's treasonous. They were putting national security at risk.
And then the other shoe drops. Immediately after the party, a plague hits Rome.
A devastating plague. And of course, the public connects the dots. We threw a massive party for the gods. The Christians snubbed it. Now the gods are angry and they're killing us with a plague.
It's the Christians' fault.
It's the Christians' fault.
This sets the scene for the first major section of our analysis, the external threat, or as I like to call it, the Empire Strikes Back.
An apt title. Very apt.
We need to look at the roll call of tyrants provided in these charts. It starts, obviously, with Nero in AD 64.
The original villain.
The source notes mention that Christians were made scapegoats for the Great Fire of Rome, but the details here are: sadistic measures included burning Christians alive to illuminate Nero's gardens.
It's horrific. Tacitus, who is a Roman historian and certainly not a Christian, he records this. Nero was rumored to have started the fire himself to clear space for his new palace.
So he needed someone to blame.
He needed someone to blame, fast. The people were turning against him. So he picked this weird, secretive Jewish sect that nobody really understood.
And he didn't just execute them, he made it a show.
No, he made it a sport. He covered them in wild beast skins to be torn apart by dogs. He crucified them. And yes, the garden parties. He would tie them to stakes, cover them in pitch, and light them on fire to serve as human torches for his evening entertainment.
It illustrates the level of hatred. I mean, the sources say Christians were considered haters of mankind. Why?
Because they rejected the whole social and religious fabric of Rome. They didn't go to the temples, they didn't participate in the festivals, they didn't join the army. They were seen as antisocial, subversive, and, well, haters of everything that made Rome, Rome.
But Nero was, in a way, isolated. This was mostly in the city of Rome, right?
For the most part, yes, it was localized. Fast forward about 200 years to AD 249 to Emperor Decius. This is where it changes. This is where it gets systematic.
The source highlights Decius as a turning point. This feels different. It feels bureaucratic.
That's exactly the word. Decius wanted to restore Rome's former glory. He was an old-school traditionalist. And how do you do that? You restore the Pax Deorum, you make the gods happy again. So he issued an empire-wide decree.
Not just in Rome.
Empire-wide. Every single citizen, man, woman, child, had to sacrifice to the gods.
And here's where it gets really interesting and terrifying. They had sacrifice certificates. The notes actually have the text of one of these. It's called a libellus.
Right. It was a legal document, like a passport for piety.
I have it here. Let me read a snippet. To the commission chosen to superintend the sacrifices. From Diogenes, son of Satabus, I have always sacrificed to the gods, and now, in your presence, in accordance with the edict, I have sacrificed, poured a libation, and tasted the offering. I request you to certify this below.
It's chillingly administrative, isn't it?
It's like filing your taxes.
It is. You would go to a commissioner in the town square, you'd pinch a little incense, throw it on the fire before a statue of the emperor, maybe say, Caesar is Lord, and they would sign your paper.
And if you had the paper,
you were safe. You could buy food in the market, you could trade, you could travel. You were a citizen in good standing.
And if you didn't have the paper,
you were an enemy of the state. You could be imprisoned, your property confiscated, you could be tortured or executed.
Okay.
This created a massive crisis for the church because it wasn't just about brave martyrs dying anymore. It was about the temptation to just fake it.
The libellatici.
Yes. That's the term for Christians who bought forged certificates or who bribed an official to sign it without actually doing the sacrifice.
It's a compromise.
A huge compromise. They reasoned, I don't want to die, but I don't want to worship an idol, so I'll just get the paper.
Which you can imagine led to huge internal drama later, the lapsed controversy. We have to get to that. But many did refuse. The sources mention Origen, one of the most brilliant theologians of the time.
Origen is a key figure, a towering intellect. He was arrested under Decius. But notice the tactic. They didn't execute him immediately.
No.
They tortured him. They stretched him on the rack. The goal wasn't just extermination. It was apostasy. They wanted to break him. If you can get a leader like Origen to say, I quit, you demoralize the whole movement.
Origen never recanted.
He didn't, but he died shortly after being released due to the severity of the injuries from that torture.
So then we fast forward to the end of this period. Diocletian, AD 303. This is called the Great Persecution.
This is the grand finale of pagan persecution. Diocletian and his junior emperor Galerius, they realized that just killing individuals wasn't working. The church kept growing. So they changed tactics.
The strategy shift.
Exactly. They went after the infrastructure of the faith.
What does that mean?
It means they destroyed church buildings. But more importantly, they burned the scriptures. They launched a campaign to find and destroy every copy of the Bible. They rounded up the clergy, the bishops, the priests, and put them in prison. It was an attempt to erase the memory of the faith.
It wasn't just killing people. It was an attempt to erase the memory and the tools of the faith.
Precisely. If you destroy the books and the leaders, the movement dies. That was the theory.
So this brings up this incredible question of survival. How do you survive when the most powerful state on earth is trying to delete you? The source material points to a specific mechanism. Martyrdom as witness.
Yes. It is vital to remember the etymology here. The word martyr is simply the Greek word for witness.
That's a powerful reframe. You aren't a victim, you are a witness.
And that is exactly how the early church viewed it. They didn't see death as defeat. They saw it as the ultimate testimony, the ultimate victory over the world. There's a psychological effect here that the Romans did not anticipate at all.
The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church.
Tertullian said that. When the public saw these Christians, ordinary people, slaves, women, old men dying with such dignity and lack of fear, It made them question everything. It made them wonder, what do they have that I don't? What is worth dying for like that?
We have some specific examples in the notes that are just, wow. Let's talk about Polycarp.
Polycarp, the bishop of Smyrna, he was a direct student of the Apostle John, so he's a living link to Jesus himself. By the time of his martyrdom, he was an old man, 86 years old.
The story goes that he was arrested and brought into the stadium. The Roman proconsul actually tried to save him.
He did. He felt sorry for him. The proconsul looked at this frail old man and said, "Look, respect your age. Just swear by the genius of Caesar. Curse Christ, and I'll let you go. Why die for this?"
And his response is legendary.
It's one of the great lines in history. 86 years I have served him, and he has done me no wrong. How can I blaspheme my king and my savior?
Wow.
And so they decided to burn him alive. But the account, which was written by the church in Smyrna and circulated, it says that the fire arched around him like a sail filled with wind and wouldn't touch his body. Eventually, the executioner had to stab him with a dagger to finish the job.
I mean, whether that's literal or poetic, it creates this aura of the supernatural.
It does. It tells the reader that God is with his people, even in the flames.
Then there's Perpetua and Felicitas. This one always gets me.
AD 203, Carthage, which is in modern-day Tunisia. Perpetua was a noblewoman, a new mother with an infant son. Felicitas was her slave girl, who was actually pregnant when she was arrested.
And the source notes highlight the subversion of class here.
Exactly. In Roman society, a noblewoman and a slave are from different planets. They would never interact as equals.
Wow.
But in prison and in the arena, they were sisters. They were thrown into the arena together. They held hands. They faced the wild beasts as equals. That visual was incredibly subversive to the Roman hierarchy. It showed that the kingdom of God leveled the playing field in a way that nothing else did.
And finally, Blandina.
Blandina was a slave girl in Lyon, in France, which is then called Gaul. The persecution there in AD 177 was just brutal. Her mistress was also arrested and was terrified that Blandina would break under torture because she was physically small and weak.
But she didn't break?
The sources say the torturers got tired before she did. They worked in shifts, torturing her from morning till night. They did everything to her, burned her, put her in a net with a wild bull, but she just kept repeating, "I am a Christian and nothing vile is done among us."
So she's refuting the rumors of cannibalism and incest with her dying breath.
Yes, she's witnessing to the truth and the goodness of her faith, even in agony.
It challenges the listener today, doesn't it? The takeaway is just so stark. The early church survived the external threat because they valued Jesus more than their biological existence.
It asks a hard question. What is our threshold for discomfort? For them, the threshold was death. For us, sometimes it's just social awkwardness, or losing a promotion, or getting an unkind comment on social media.
But as the sources point out, persecution wasn't the only threat. In some ways, the expert notes here argue that it wasn't even the most dangerous threat.
No. History shows that persecution often strengthens the church. It purifies it. It gets rid of the half-hearted. The more dangerous threat is the one that comes from inside. The decay from within. Heresy.
That brings us to section 2, the internal threat, or getting it wrong.
The argument here is that while persecution kills the body, heresy kills the soul. It kills the movement itself. If you change the core message of Jesus, you lose the movement entirely. You're no longer Christianity. You're something else that just uses the name.
And the sources list what I call the greatest hits of error. These weren't just minor disagreements about, what color the carpet should be or what time service starts.
No, not.
These were fundamental rewrites of reality.
Let's start with Gnosticism. This was a massive competitor to Orthodox Christianity in the 2nd century. A huge, huge movement.
Gnosticism, from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge.
Right. It appeals to intellectual vanity. The basic concept is dualism. Matter is evil and spirit is good. The physical world, our bodies, all of it is a mistake. It's a prison created by a lesser, ignorant God called the demiurge.
Okay, so if the physical body is evil,
then Jesus couldn't have had a real physical body. Gnostics believed that the Christ was a pure spirit that came upon the man Jesus at his baptism and then left him before the crucifixion. Because a divine being can't touch evil matter. God can't bleed. God can't die.
it turns Jesus into a ghost or a hologram.
Exactly. And if Jesus didn't physically die and rise, then the resurrection is just a metaphor, not a historical fact. And if the resurrection isn't real, the entire Christian hope falls apart. It just becomes a philosophy of escaping the body rather than redeeming the world.
Then you have Marcianism. Marcian seems like a guy who just wanted to clean things up, simplify things.
Marcion was a wealthy ship owner, lived around AD 144. He struggled deeply with the Old Testament. He looked at the wars, the judgment, the strict laws, and he said, this God of the Jews cannot possibly be the same as the loving Father of Jesus.
So he proposed two gods?
Two different gods, yes.
Yeah.
The angry, bungling creator God of the Old Testament versus the loving, spiritual, merciful Father of the New Testament.
And his solution was extreme editing.
He took a pair of scissors to the Bible. He cut out the entire Old Testament. Gone. He cut out Matthew, Mark, and John because they were too Jewish. He kept parts of Luke and 10 of Paul's letters, but he edited those two to remove any positive references to the Old Testament God.
Talk about a Reader's Digest version, but this forced the church to do something really important, right? This leads to one of our survival mechanisms, the canon.
It did. It was a catalyst.
Yeah.
When Marcion starts chopping out the Bible and saying, here's the authoritative list, the church realizes, wait, we need to formally define what the Bible actually is.
Yeah.
They couldn't just wipe it out anymore. They needed a clear, defined list.
So the source material shows a process. It wasn't just a bunch of guys in a smoke-filled room picking their favorite books. They used specific criteria.
Right. There were three main criteria that emerged. First, apostolicity. Was this written by an apostle or a close associate of an apostle, like Mark with Peter or Luke with Paul?
Okay, so it had to be connected to the eyewitnesses.
Yes. Second, orthodoxy. Does it contain content that matches the rule of faith? The basic story of Jesus that had been handed down from the beginning. Does it sound like the Jesus we know?
Got it. And third?
And third, Catholicity, with a small c. Meaning, is it widely accepted and used by the churches everywhere, from Rome to Alexandria to Antioch? Was it universally recognized?
We see a letter from Athanasius in AD 367 that lists the exact 27 books we have in the New Testament today.
It took time, but the pressure of heresy, the pressure from Marcion, forced them to clarify the boundaries of Scripture. Without Marcion, we might not have had to define the New Testament so quickly.
But we have to talk about the heavy hitter, the heresy that almost took over the world, Arianism.
This is the big one. 4th century. Arius of Alexandria.
The sources mention he was a presbyter, a pastor, and he had a flair for marketing.
He really did. Arius started teaching that if the Son is begotten by the Father, there must have been a time when the Son didn't exist. Fathers always exist before their sons, right? That's the simple human logic.
There was a time when he was not.
That was his slogan. And the sources say he turned it into a sea shanty, a catchy jingle that sailors, dock workers, and travelers would sing in the streets.
A theological pop song? That's dangerous.
Very. The idea was simple and appealing. Jesus is great. He's the highest of all creatures. He's like a superhero. But he is a creature. He's not eternal God. He is a created being.
It sounds logical to the human mind. It's less mysterious than the Trinity.
It appeals to human logic. But the expert response, the orthodox response was, if Jesus is a creature, he cannot save us. Only God can bridge the infinite gap between God and man. If Jesus is just a super angel, we are still stuck in our sins. And furthermore, if we worship a creature, no matter how great, we are idolaters.
So you have the external pressure of lions and the internal pressure of bad pop songs about Jesus being a creature. This brings us to section 3, the turning point. Everything changes with one man, Constantine.
The sources describe a cinematic moment, AD 312, the Battle of Milvian Bridge.
Set the scene for us.
Okay, so the Roman Empire had been divided. Constantine is fighting Maxentius for control of the Western Empire. Maxentius is holed up in Rome. He has the advantage. He has the superior army, the high walls. But for some reason, he decides to come out and fight.
And the bridge?
Maxentius had destroyed the stone Milvian bridge to protect the city. So he builds a temporary pontoon bridge, a bridge of boats, to cross the Tiber River and meet Constantine's army.
A bridge of boats. That sounds unstable.
This is a massive tactical error. Meanwhile, Constantine, the night before the battle, he prays. The sources say he sees a vision in the sun, cross of light, and hears the words, in hoc signo vinces, in this sign, conquer.
The Chi-Rho. The first two letters of Christ in Greek.
He has his soldiers paint that symbol on their shields. They charge. Maxentius's army is pushed back onto that very unstable bridge of boats. The bridge collapses under the weight of the retreating army. Maxentius, in his heavy armor, drowns in the river.
And Constantine marches into Rome, not just as a conqueror, but under the banner of Christ.
And everything flips. In AD 313, he and his co-emperor Licinius issue the Edict of Milan.
Explain that document. What did it do?
It's a decree of religious tolerance. It says, we grant to the Christians and others full authority to observe that religion which each preferred. It basically ends the persecution overnight. Christianity goes from being a hunted, illegal religion to being a favored legal religion.
The persecution stops, the dogs are called off, the gardens aren't burning anymore. This should be the happy ending, right? The credits should roll.
You would think. Pastors had spent centuries thinking, if only the persecution stopped, we would win the world. Well, it stopped.
But the sources call this a mixed blessing.
It brings a whole new set of problems. Suddenly, it's politically advantageous to be a Christian. If you want a job in the government, if you want a tax break for clergy, if you want the emperor's favor, you better be at church on Sunday.
So you get nominalism. People who are Christians in name only.
The church grew in quantity. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Massively. But the quality, the level of commitment, that's debatable. The narrow road suddenly became a very broad, paved imperial highway.
And we immediately see a split. The Donatist controversy. This ties back to the persecution we talked about earlier.
Yes. Remember those sacrifice certificates? The libodici.
The traitors.
Right. There were bishops, church leaders who had handed over copies of the Bible to be burned by the Romans to save their own lives. They were called traditores, which is where we get our word traitor.
So now, under Constantine, the persecution is over. These bishops come back and say, okay, sorry about that. I'm ready to lead communion again.
And a group led by a guy named Donatus in North Africa said, absolutely not, no way. Their argument was, how can a man who betrayed Jesus administer the holy sacraments? If a traitor baptizes you, is the baptism even real?
That is a heavy question. If my pastor turns out to be a fraud, does that mean my salvation is void?
That was the fear. It created deep, deep anxiety. But the other side, led by folks like Cyprian and later Augustine, argued that the validity of the sacrament depends on God, not on the moral perfection of the priest.
The rusty pipe analogy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Water flowing through a rusty pipe is still water. God's grace can flow through a flawed leader. If it depended on the priest being perfect, we'd all be in trouble because nobody is perfect.
But the Donatists didn't buy it.
No, they split. They formed their own pure church. It was a schism that lasted for centuries. Constantine even tried to intervene to force them back together, but he couldn't fix it. It shows that political power can't solve the spiritual problems.
But Constantine did try to solve the Arian problem, and that leads us directly to Section 4, the Council of Nicaea.
AD 325. This is the first ecumenical council, a worldwide council.
And Constantine calls it because the Arian controversy, that catchy jingle about Jesus being created, is tearing the empire apart. He's a politician. He wants unity.
He invites roughly 318 bishops to a summer palace in Nicaea. And the visual here is just stunning. I want you to picture this room.
Tell me.
These men had just come out of the Great Persecution under Diocletian just a few years earlier. The sources say many of them were missing eyes. Some had hamstrung legs where the tendons were cut so they couldn't run. Some had burn scars from the mines where they were forced to work. They were the survivors.
The walking wounded.
Exactly. And here they are, limping past the imperial guards who used to hunt them, sitting on gold chairs in the emperor's palace.
That must have been surreal.
And then Arius stands up to present his case. He argues that the Son is a created being. He's divine, sure, but not God in the same way the Father is God.
And how does the room react?
Violently. One source says an overseer ripped Arius's notes to pieces. Another story, maybe legendary, but it fits the mood, says that St. Nicholas, yes, Santa Claus, got so mad he walked across the room and slapped Arius in the face.
Wow.
They literally put their hands over their ears so they wouldn't have to hear the blasphemy. This was not a polite academic seminar.
No, this was about the soul of the faith.
And it all came down to a debate over one Greek word, homoousios.
One essence or same substance?
Yes, the Orthodox party, led by Alexander and his deacon Athanasius, insisted on that word. Arius and his supporters wanted to say homoousios.
That's one letter difference, the letter iota.
Literally one iota. You've heard the phrase, it doesn't make one iota of difference. This is where it comes from. But here, the difference was infinite. Similar essence means Jesus is like God, but not God. Same essence means Jesus is God.
The council drew a hard line.
They did. They wrote into the creed that we still say today, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten not made, of one essence with the Father. They locked it down.
But here's the survival lesson. Just because they wrote a creed didn't mean the fight was over. Enter Athanasius.
The Black Dwarf. That was the nickname his enemies gave him because he was short and dark-skinned, and Egyptian. Athanasius was his deacon at Nicaea, but he became the bishop of Alexandria. And for the next 50 years, he was the champion of the Nicene view.
But the politics shifted, right? Constantine's successors were often Arians.
Yes. Arianism became very popular with the elites. It was easier to understand, less paradoxical. Athanasius was exiled from his own city 5 separate times. He spent years hiding in the desert tombs, hiding among the monks.
There's a phrase associated with him, Athanasius contra mundum.
Athanasius against the world.
That is the definition of survival mode. Standing alone when the entire world, including the emperor and many, many other bishops, says you are wrong.
And he survived, and orthodoxy survived, because he refused to compromise on the identity of Jesus Christ. If he had given in, if he had said, okay, similar is close enough, Christianity would have just become another moral philosophy. It would have lost the power of salvation.
So while Athanasius is fighting these theological battles in the cities, there is this whole other movement happening, a pivot. Section 5, monasticism.
This is the internal reaction to the easiness of Christianity under Constantine.
Right. If the church is now wealthy and favored, how do you show you are hardcore? You can't be a red martyr anymore because nobody is killing you.
So you become a white martyr. You die to self. You leave the city, you leave society, and you go to the desert to fight your own demons.
Anthony the Great is the key figure here, the father of this movement.
He is considered the father of monasticism. Around AD 270, he heard the gospel reading in church. Go, sell what you possess and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And he took it absolutely literally.
He just did it.
He sold everything and moved to the Egyptian desert to fight demons and pray. He wanted total isolation to purify his heart. But ironically, his reputation for holiness attracted people. Crowds went out to the desert to find him and learn from him.
And then you get the extreme versions, Simeon Stylites.
Simeon is fascinating. He felt that even the desert was too crowded. So he climbed a pillar, a stone column, and lived on top of it for 36 years.
36 years on a pillar, the logistics of that, I mean...
His disciples would hoist food up to him in a bucket. He would preach to the crowds who came to see this bizarre spectacle. It sounds crazy to us, but it was a radical protest against the comfort and luxury of the Roman Church. He was saying, I need nothing but God.
Then you have the intellectuals who went to the desert. We have to talk about Jerome and Paula.
Jerome is a complex, brilliant, and cranky character. The sources say he was guilt-ridden, battling lust, constantly remembering the dancing girls of Rome. So he moves to a cave in Bethlehem to escape temptation.
And he teaches himself Hebrew to distract his brain.
Right, and this leads to his life's work, the Vulgate. He translates the entire Bible from the original Hebrew and Greek into Latin, the common or vulgar language of the people.
And Paula, she's part of this story too.
Paula was a wealthy Roman widow, a brilliant scholar in her own right. She funded the whole operation and studied alongside him. They were this incredible scholarly team. Together, they produced the Bible translation that the Western Church used for the next 1,000 years.
The sources mention a funny detail about Jerome, though.
He refused to bathe.
Laughs what?
He claimed, he who has been washed in Christ needs no other washing.
I bet that cave smelled great.
A fragrant offering, perhaps. But their devotion, however eccentric, produced something tangible that survived for centuries.
And finally, the Cappadocians. Basil, Gregory, and his sister Macrina. They kind of tweaked the monastic model, didn't they?
They did. They saw that living on a pillar or in a cave all alone has its limits. Basil the Great, in particular, wrote the rules for monastic living that became the standard. And he asked a profound question. If you live alone, whose feet will you wash?
That's a good point. You can't practice love in a vacuum.
So they founded monasteries that weren't just for escaping the world, but for serving it. They built the basileas, which were essentially the first hospitals. They cared for lepers. They integrated prayer with work, ora et labora, pray and work.
So we have this incredible tapestry. Martyrs facing lions, bishops debating iotas, monks sitting on pillars, scholars translating in caves.
All of them survival mechanisms for different kinds of threats.
So, Section 6. Let's bring this all home to the learner. How does this help us today? What is the survival kit from the early church?
I think we can synthesize 3 main tools from all these sources.
Okay, lay them out.
First, intellectual survival. That comes from Nicaea and the creeds. You need to know what you believe and why.
It's not enough to just have faith in a vague, sentimental sense.
No. When the pressure comes, whether it's persecution or just cultural confusion or a new catchy heresy on the internet, a vague Jesus cannot save you. You need deep theological roots. You need the precision of the creed to know why you believe Jesus is fully God.
Okay, what's that?
Social survival. That comes from the structure of the church and the Cappadocians. You need community. Even the monks who fled to the desert eventually realized they needed community. You cannot survive as a Lone Ranger Christian. It's not a solo sport.
The early church was a tight-knit network. They took care of each other. When the plague hit, the pagans fled the cities, but the Christians stayed and cared for the sick, both Christian and pagan. That community is a survival mechanism.
It's a powerful witness. And third, spiritual survival. That comes from the martyrs and the monks. It's the purification of the heart.
It's that white martyrdom.
Yes. We might not face the lions, but we face the empire of consumerism, of distraction, of comfort. The lesson from the monks is that we need intentional withdrawal.
We don't need to sit on a pillar.
Please don't. Your neighbors will complain. But you do need to disconnect. You need to find your desert. You need to turn off the phone, step away from the noise, and focus on God. If you are constantly plugged into the empire, you will eventually be assimilated by it.
And a lesson from Jerome and Paula is that this devotion leads to production. They didn't just hide in a cave. They translated the Bible for 1,000 years of the church.
True. Deep devotion should lead to work that blesses the future. It's not just about personal holiness. It's about building something that lasts.
So to answer our original mission question, how did they survive?
They survived because they feared God more than they feared the emperor. And they loved the truth more than they loved being popular or comfortable. They believed something was real, and they were willing to structure their entire lives and deaths around that reality.
And that is a profound challenge for us.
It really is.
I want to end with a thought that struck me while reading about Constantine.
Go on.
Constantine thought he was saving the church. He gave it money, buildings, tax breaks. He made it easy. He made it comfortable.
And the monks thought he was ruining it. They fled the comfort.
It raises this provocative question for all of us listening. Is the church actually stronger when it is comfortable and accepted by the culture? Or is it strongest when it is threatened and on the margins?
The history we've just looked at seems to suggest that the threat clarifies the mission. Comfort breeds complacency. Here's an old saying. When the church marries the spirit of the age, she becomes a widow in the next.
Something to think about as you drive to your comfortable job in your air-conditioned car. Maybe we need to find a little bit of that threat, or at least a little piece of that desert in our own lives this week.
Indeed. Find your desert.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.